the wave is coming. A third of the inventory in Florida by 2037 is going to be a lot of this probate stuff. So I think if you get in the game now, you're going to find a lot of stuff.
This episode brought to you by Suites at Madison. Meeting and conference rooms for rent by the hour, week, month, or year. Suites at Madison, where business gets done. Check them out at www.downtowntampaoffice.com. Now, on to the show.
You are listening to the Invest Florida Real Estate Show, covering topics in lending, buy and sell strategies, property management, hot markets, and tips and tools to guide you along the way on your path to real estate success. You want Florida investment real estate talk? You have come to the right place. And now, our hosts, Eric Odom and Steven Silverman.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Invest Florida Real Estate Show. This is your co-host, Eric Odom, along with Steven Silverman. Steven, it's dog days of summer.
Dog days of summer, and we are having record temperatures, and the market's very tight.
The market's as hot as the weather.
There's just not a lot of inventory. There's more demand than supply. And so we've been thinking about, are there any other ways to find opportunities for investment? And so that became the subject of today's podcast.
Yeah, our guest is going to be talking a little bit about probate and some ways to help solve some of those more complex issues. Anybody who's working probate, looking for leads, there's always these deals on the probate side which can be alluring, but they seem so prickly and problematic that it's hard really to work through. And the guest is going to talk about how to do some of that. And then us on the property management side, we do property management on only commercial, Steven, because we've decided that it's going to be strategic, that we're going to stick with what we know, which is we do a lot of retail and industrial, but we're getting ready to add another person there, and that business continues to grow. It's an interesting time. A lot of folks in the market, and there's a lot of turnover, happening both on the commercial and the residential side. So we've got a lot of, business that's really percolating. Wanted to take a little bit of time to read a review. We love reviews. Reviews are fantastic because that helps not only us, but it helps y'all. If you like listening to this show, it is a big benefit for you to leave a review. And we ask every show for our listeners to do so if they've not done it already. Our guests will look to see who pays attention to us, and they look at your reviews. And those reviews are important for someone making a decision on whether to come on the show or not. This review is from Fernando in Miami. He says, "This is one of my favorite podcasts in commercial real estate. Informative, great guests, and nice to listen to. Highly recommended for anyone in CRE." Fernando, really appreciate it. And guys, if you've not done so already, would encourage you to go on to the Apple iTunes Store or other app that you like to use and give us a review. It definitely helps us with our guests, and it is a challenge for us to find guests, and we work awful hard at this show. So, guys, we appreciate that. Steven, you got anything else before we get rolling with our probate discussion?
Let's roll into probate and see what other opportunities we can find out there. Today, we have with us Al Nicoletti. Al is an attorney, and he practices law in Florida with offices in Jacksonville. Al heavily focuses his law practice on probate, quiet title, and partitions, and has created a very unique niche working in the probate real estate market. He has strategies to work and solve simple and complex real estate issues, which are often a problem with probate. Al has figured out a way to create these structures so that everything is efficient and happens fast. Al is active on Facebook. He has a YouTube channel under Al Nicoletti, and also has a podcast show called The Al Nicoletti Show. Al, welcome to the Invest Florida Show.
Eric, Steven, thank you so much for having me. And I love being here. Can't wait to dive in with both of you on all this stuff. And I'm so happy to connect with you all that do a podcast on Florida investing.
No, Al, we really appreciate the time that you're investing with us today. Why don't you give us a 30,000-foot overview of how you got into the business and how you ended up in probate?
So lawyers can talk a lot, so I promise I'm not going to talk like a lawyer. But basically, when I got out of law school, I took whatever job I could take. I was a musician for 15 years, so I wasn't even in law or doing anything remote to that for a long time. And so once I jumped into the law field and actually became a lawyer, I took whatever job I could get. And so when I got out, I went and saw an old mentor friend of mine, and that has been a lawyer for 30, 40 years. And he said, come on in, start reading all the books and, you'll get your feet wet. So at the time I was doing foreclosure defense litigation. And that was kind of in the end of like 2016, 2017, all the courts are still backed up. We were taking depositions, we were going to court. And while I was doing some of the foreclosure defense stuff, one of the things I noticed that came up were probate situations. And I had a friend of mine that was in law school. We're best friends now. I mean, it's amazing how everything happens. But in law school, he was working with somebody that was doing probate work. And so I kind of knew what kind of probate stuff was, and but I never done anything. And so I think like a year passed, I was doing the foreclosure stuff, and my friend Jesse, he comes down, and I think we went to an event one night, and we got back to my place, and he said, do you realize, he's a lawyer at the time, and he goes, do you realize how many properties are sitting out there titled in the name of the deceased, and nobody's ever done a probate on these? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I had no idea, I had an idea where he was going with it, but I didn't like really absorb what he meant. And he said, yeah, like you should see it. Like, there's just so many properties, real estate sitting out there where a probate's either never been done or there's just probates going on all the time. But the key point was never been done. So at the time, I didn't think of anything of it. A year came by, he comes down for the Duke game, basketball game, same situation happens, and he sits down, he goes, so what have you found out about the whole thing about how many people are on title that are still deceased? And I said, I still don't get it. And as he was explaining it, the light bulb went off, and I realized that people can die, own real estate, and the heirs can't sell the house without a lawyer being involved, and title insurance plays a huge role in that. So I think what happens, the light bulb went off. I said, this is a huge opportunity where I could, grab these and say, hey, we can provide a solution if it's never been done. Because some of these heirs, we'll dive in a little deeper, but some of these heirs, they'll pay property taxes for 10 years. And then in the 11th year, they finally want to sell. And so now you still need to do a probate even after all that time. So the light bulb goes off, and I'm hitting the ground running. I tried explaining this to a lot of the real estate people in Miami. Everybody heard about probate. Everybody heard it takes like 12 months, 9 months. We'll talk about timing. And I don't think it grabbed anybody's attention. So Jesse's like, there's a job opportunity up here. Why don't you come up here? You're going to get paid well. And if you pitch the way you did in Miami to the people in Jacksonville and other parts of Florida, you would hit the ground running and it would take off. And I was like, I don't know, because it really hadn't like absorbed with people in Miami. It hit one guy still can't believe it took off the way it has. And the message, I've kept it the same throughout the last 4 or 5 years. So I took the job in Jacksonville. I brought with me this idea with him that we could like figure out this whole niche. And so I'm tapping into networks. I'm a networking kind of person. I'm a big marketer. You can check all my stuff out everywhere on the social media apps and iTunes and Spotify and Facebook. So I'm a big networker. I'm a huge marketer. So I took that skill and I went out. I'm networking with people. I'm explaining it, and I'm in the whole real estate world. I'm with the realtors. I'm in the investors. And I think it stuck with some people at the time. But where it really stuck and struck a chord is when I started speaking and I started doing presentations and explaining these topics to people. And I would do PowerPoint presentations on explaining like what this is and what all of that stuff is and what are you looking for and what is probate, what is this and what's that. And as soon as I started doing it, because I just had a natural way of speaking, as soon as that happened, boom, everything just kind of went one after another. I had people saying, hey, we got this situation. Hey, we got that situation. And at the time, it's like, it floods the market, right? Like everybody's like wanting to know, like, how can we solve this problem? And so it took a while, but it's now, I mean, we can talk about now, but I want to just kind of go through then. It really hit a point when I was just getting these probates from a lot of different people because these heirs had never gone through it before. So if you're wondering how it got started, it all got started with an idea. And I took that idea with my skill set of marketing and just blew it up into this big thing. And now it's just been crazy. I'm like, everybody hears probate, they think Al.
So Al, let me just, there are people listening to the podcast, and maybe you can just give just a very brief overview of what a probate is and how it works and what you do that's different.
Okay. So what is probate, right? Very simple. Somebody dies, they own real estate, or it can be a bank account, it could be a car. But the big picture is that the individual's name is on the title to the object or thing, a house. Well, and it's not in an LLC or a trust, right? You're talking about individual name. So they die. And when they die, in order to properly transfer the title of whatever it is, but here it's real estate, to transfer the title to the heirs, there needs to be a court process. And what plays a role in that and why we have to do it is title insurance. Title insurance, if there's a buyer, the title insurance company doesn't want to write a policy until there's been a determination of heirs. So all probate is transferring the title over to the heirs. Now they have authority to do with whatever they want with that real estate, that car, the bank account. That's it. All it is. Transfer of title. You're distributing out what the deceased had to the heirs. And so and people make it so complicated, right? And what's different about what I'm able to do is I don't do closings and I don't do title work. I don't do any of the stuff that people do, hey, there's a buyer, seller, close. I specifically focus on this niche. I do a couple of the other things that we talked about in the intro, but I focus in on this niche. I can wait until a closing to get paid, which is super nice because a lot of these heirs don't have money. They don't have the funds to do it because they've moved on in their life, or, this house is just sitting with equity, but they don't have the money to move it forward. And many attorneys want the money up front before they do anything. And the efficiency side, I'm very efficient. I know how to efficiently created a system, and I talk about this openly on my platforms, is that I created a system where I know what to do up front. I get all the paperwork up front, and I've automated it. So now I know how to move it through and get it through the whole system, get it to the point where it gets before the judge, it's signed, and now we're done. And so what's unique is I can do these things in a matter of weeks. I've done these things in a matter of days, but that was a lot more before pre-COVID, but more like a matter of a couple of weeks, maybe a month. And all probate really is, and like what we're really doing is, because somebody passed, and because we have to do this, because if that heir wants to sell the property, the title insurance wants it done, we're really gathering key info, right? We're getting the death certificate, we're getting the heirs' names, we're getting the property address, we're getting the title commitment work. I always like title commitments. We're getting key info. Are they the only heir? Are they a lineal descendant? Are they, where are the tree? Are they, was it the primary residence?
So, Al, as you're talking, I'm thinking, like, from an investor point of view, what are the opportunities and how does the person find that probate?
Yeah, because let's talk about it a little bit. I've done a number of probate deals myself. I can speak about it from experience. You go to whatever the court that's being handled locally in your district, keeps records of, the probate proceedings. You try to contact those folks, and usually you're the third or fourth person. If you're an investor, you're the third or fourth person who's already been contacting. God knows how they're finding that. Maybe they're looking at obituaries or whatnot. But typically by the time it's in, you see these, whether it's formal proceeding, it's a summary proceeding. You say there's another one. I don't remember which one that is, but
ancillary.
There you go. So that some of them have money, some of them don't. You're able to sort of look, and you're able to sort of reach out to the ones who that might have a house or might have some real estate that can be sold, and definitely not all of them do. But by the time you're seeing that on court, it could be days after it's on probate, that's listed on the probate, but you're the third or fourth person who's already contacted them. And if you get it later down the road, there's been 20, 30 investors that have already contacted them. So what we're trying to do is figure out the ones who are left at that point who don't already have like a path of how they're going to dispose of this asset. Typically what's going on is they don't have money to fix the property. They don't have an attorney. There could be any number of reasons but it usually has to do around money, that the ball has not been moved yet, or they don't have a clear path of how they're going to dispose of their parents or their loved ones, asset, their real estate. So this is kind of where you come in, right? This is because this is a little bit different, where most probate attorneys are going to say, well, give me a retainer of $5,000 and I'll get to work on it, right? And then 6 months later, 9 months later, it's still just sitting there. And you can do this process a lot faster, and you can also structure the fees on the back end, right? So this sort of helps that problem. With a lot of investors run into that brick wall that they're the fourth or fifth person who's contacted the person. They don't know how to help them with an attorney because they can't loan them the money to be able to get that attorney to get into contract. So talk a little bit about that process, about they're coming to you, and then what would you do that would be different than other probate attorneys?
Oh, I'm just simply saying, look, I'm not going to hold up this whole thing. If you need to get this done, I can wait for the attorney's fees at the closing, right? At the sale of the property. Like, I don't need the $5,000, $6,000 up front. Like, I'll wait for attorney's fees at the end, where, like you said, most will say, well, wait a second, we went to one person and they said it was $3,000. They wanted a check up front. And here's the cool part, is that can come out of their seller proceeds, right? So the fees can come out of theirs at the closing at the end, or if they arrange a different thing with the buyer or the investor, whoever's buying the property, where they can be the one that pays me as like the third party buyer, then and the client consents to that, then we can arrange it that way too. That means they had to pay absolutely zero to do any of the work. And they get something done that nobody else was able to do or offered.
So we have investors looking to the show. I mean, in your experience working with investors, how are they finding these probate opportunities, and are they really opportunities? Are they able to get properties at a discount?
Yeah, I think I could tell you stories about investors that have gotten deals. Like, just one quick story, and I'll talk. And don't let me forget to talk about the foreclosure and the tax auction hitting it right before. That's a huge point. I know this one investor that had a probate deal, and I think it was about a year ago. And mom or dad died. I think it was mom died. There were only 2 kids ever. I mean, we could talk about all the logistics, but there were only 2 kids, and I think the mortgage was like $110,000 payoff. And I think the investor was offering, I can't remember if it was like 120 or 125. And so the heirs, they just wanted to get rid of it. They were tired of all the letters. They were tired of people coming by the property and just driving by. They wanted it done and gone. So the investor made his offer, and they said, hey, they pull title, we need to do probate. So I do the probate. I do it like in 3 days or whatever. I did it quickly. And the investor bought the property, and later come to find out that after repairs and it was just a mess, but after repairs and fixing, he was able to get an ARV on that property of probably about 200. So, I mean, you're talking about really good numbers on these spreads on probates. You can get really sweet assignment fees. I had a guest on my show one time and told me you can get $30,000, $50,000 on each probate if you structure it the right way. So if you're wondering, where am I seeing a lot of the investors hitting it? Number one, tax delinquencies. Why? Because somebody hasn't paid the taxes. They're the owner, and usually the owner pays the taxes. So either they forgot, they can't, or they're deceased. And if they're deceased, At some point, the taxes go on a tax delinquent list called tax certificates, and the county puts it on a list. So if you're able to pull the tax certificate list and you find any of those properties where somebody had passed or somebody's not paying them, it could be a probate situation. Now, the interesting part that I've seen investors hit are they're hitting them right before it hits a tax deed auction. The only way the property is stopped at a tax deed auction are if the taxes are all paid off, and if not, then it goes to the tax deed auction. Well, they're hitting it, and what's crazy cool about it is that it's a call to action. So if you're able to find the heirs of that person that owned a property, and the property is about to hit the auction, you can explain to them and say, hey, look, it's going to go to auction. You have no idea what it's going to go for. Here's my price. And if we don't do it right now, it's going to get lost, and there's no clue what you're going to get at the public auction. So it's almost like it lights a fire under them to do something. Same thing with foreclosures. For hitting it right before it hits the auction is huge, because that means they got to do something. So some of the best leads are where the heirs have to do something. They have to make a choice. It's almost like they have no choice. They need to do it, or they lose it. So they take a chance. Pre-foreclosures. So we're talking about like at the end near an auction. How about pre-foreclosures? The only reason it's going to pre-foreclosure, and there's a lis pendens, you could check lis pendens in the official records in Florida. Every county, you can pull it in the official records. A lis pendens means there's pending legal action, and probably usually it's either a quiet title, but more often it's a foreclosure. And why? The person forgot to pay their mortgage payments. They forgot, they can't, they're dead. So those are another lead you can find all over the place.
It's I can speak from my own deals that I've done on the probate side. It's a unique situation. I mean, I can go through the handful of ones that I've done, and one of them, for example, there's 4 siblings. They all hated each other. One of them had money, the other 3 didn't. And the one that had money had been putting money in to support it, and then apparently there was some sort of fight that when the deal got settled, they were all going to split it, 25, 25, 25, and the other 3 said, well, this money that you already put in, we don't really count that, so you're not going to get paid back, and then a quarter is going to come out. It's just going to be, you're going to get a quarter, and that's it. So there's no incentive at that point for the one sibling who had the money to be able to keep supporting the deal, and just said, to hell with it then. I'm not putting another nickel into it. Well, meanwhile, the thing just sat there and it rotted. But I mean, this is where, there's so many different ways that, deals start going sideways on these probate. And if you can come in and solve those issues as an investor, this is where you add the value. And so this is where I believe that, Al, this is where, your service comes in, because there have been times where I've told heirs that you got to get this through probate. So let's get it through probate. Well, we don't have money for that. No one's going to put in the money to do that. And then, you're giving that opportunity for them to come in and help solve that issue, but you're going to get paid on the back end of that. That's huge. I would have purchased probably a couple more properties if I had known that you existed and that there was a path there.
I had investors at a boot camp I did about 1.5 years ago say the exact same thing as almost a testimonial at the end of the boot camp. He said, if we had known you 5 years ago, we'd be buying a retirement home somewhere else, because there were so many deals that got dropped. Before I got to Jax, they didn't have this. There was no unique tool or mechanism like me to come in and help solve a problem like this. It's ever since I was here, and of course I'm just naturally good at my marketing and I know how to make it explode, that, and I actually talked about it, right? Like, it was like probate's like a thing that many people, they hear it's like terrible, it's long, they don't want to deal with it. Now I come in and I say, wait a second, you mean the niche that used to be complicated and terrible is now simple and we can make it easy? That's the huge upside.
So do you work all counties around Florida, or are you specific to the Jax market?
Every county in Florida, doesn't matter.
Okay.
I've done probates in Highlands County. I've done them in Escambia, Pensacola. I have one right now I'm about to do in Santa Rosa. I've done some in Citrus, Polk County, Hillsborough. And what's unique also, and I'll say this just as a key point, every county's got a little bit of a different rule. Like, they require a couple more extra documents. I know what each county really wants, the main counties especially, but I know what the counties want. And I know that's the efficiency, right? You tell me Tampa, I know exactly what Tampa wants. You tell me Miami, I'll give a list and I'll tell you exactly what Miami wants, or we're not getting that order.
When I think of probates, I'm thinking of single family homes. Do you ever see commercial properties coming up on probate lists?
So I've never seen like an actual like commercial building, but I actually have a probate we're about to do in South Florida. That's a commercial zoned lot that the investor was able to snag at a tax deed auction. And I think what they're going to do is, they'll either assign it or they'll have an end buyer that's going to come in and do development. So in the world of commercial, that's probably the biggest commercial thing I've seen. And the property, I mean, we could dive in if you wanted to know more, but property's a mess. We're going to have to do about 4 to 5 probates on that one property because it's been sitting in that family for over 60 years.
Oh my gosh. So tell me, because I know each one of these deals can have their own prickly thorns and difficult paths. Tell me how you would structure your fees, because at the end of the day, the investor needs to know, okay, well, if I'm paying for it, they don't have the money to pay for it. I'll structure it inside of my deal and pay the probate attorney on the back end. But I need to know what that attorney number is so I know how to make an offer. How does that work out so the person get a little bit better idea of trying to narrow down? Because like you just talked about one that's got 4 probates it's got to go through. Mm-hmm. That's really complex. And it might be other complex issues that, marriages that went sideways that need to be cleaned up too. And so how do you try to tell an investor like, well, this is what my fees are going to be for this particular case? I mean, and how quickly can you turn that around?
So a lot of the fees is flat fee based unless it ends up being wacky and weird and litigated and complicated. Okay, so let's do an example. You find a lot, it may be a house, but there's no creditors, there's no really any issues. You see 2 to 5 heirs. You can be in the ballpark of somewhere about 2,000, 2,500 to 3,000. So somewhere between 2,000 to 3,000, right in that ballpark, something simple. When you start having to go through formal administrations, like bigger administrations, because there's more assets that the heir has that they didn't tell you about, which is what always happens. And we have to do a formal, or there's creditors we have to notice, maybe in a summary. You're kind of looking at 3,000 to 4,000. If we're starting to talk about Miami, 4,000 to 6,000. It really depends on what's happening. And if it's like I had somebody call and they said, you'll find this interesting. They said mom dies and there's no will. I said okay, and I said how many children ever? I think she said I think 9 or somebody had 9. No, it was one of the kids had 9 children. And I was like 9. And then of them, there was something where there was like 3 more. So it was like 12. And they were like, yeah. And I was like, well, there's going to be work to do here. This is not just like a little probate. Like there's like 12 heirs, 15 heirs. Like I've never done one with that many before. I almost did 24, but it never happened. So when you're starting to talk about a lot of heirs or a lot of issues, that's when it gets a little bit more expensive. But when we get into problems that nobody else can solve, like the one in the commercial lot, you're starting to talk about 20,000, 30,000. But that's different, right? Like you have to gauge these one by one. I'm really open about it. Like I already have in my head, I kind of know what I'm looking to listen to, what I'm looking to hear. Like we had a case where it went through 3 or 4 lawyers and nobody figured out what to do, or they all dragged their feet and the client was like, y'all have no idea what you're doing. Somehow they found me something in South Florida. It was one heir, Eric, Steven, one heir, one person, and they went through 3, 4 lawyers. They couldn't figure it out. And so we got it done. We figured it out. But we had to wait. The lawyers, the other lawyers got in the way. They said they had outstanding costs and fees. Some of them didn't want to sign something, and it just dragged on. And we had to do our billable time just to keep track of time. So hard to always pin down exactly what it is, but I'm very transparent and open. When I hear it, I'm always like, this is what I think it's going to be. That's where we're at.
So Al, I guess what's unique about this business is that people are dying to get in. But let me ask you a question. We have investors here that have found a probate and they've got a lead on one. How can they get hold of you if they want to ask any questions or get some advice?
So one of the best ways is you have my phone number. So that's 904-999-0053. You can also check out my website, www.alnicoletti.com, or you can also reach me at Nicoletti, NicoleTTI.com.
Awesome. Al, any other words of wisdom for investors out there? I know it's a tough market right now trying to find deals. Probate, there's a continual supply in the state of Florida of probate deals, and the faster you can get on these probate cases, the better chances that you have of actually consummating a deal. But on these particularly problematic ones where typically the owners don't have the money, the heirs don't have the money, and they don't really know which way to turn, they need to find you. I think this is, it offers a great service. Are there any other great, ideas that you've got for folks working the probate business on the investor side?
Yeah, I think a couple we were even talking about backstage, which was if you ever get stumped with a lead, like you find that there is a probate property, but you don't even know where to begin with it. Like you just can't find any heirs. Just know in Florida, you could pull a death certificate on the person if you have the name, the exact date of death. Anybody in the state of Florida can pull a death certificate without cause if you're over 18.
What is that death cert? How does that help an investor?
On the death certificate, actually, it names an informant. So somebody filled out that death certificate that could be an heir. They could be a family member. They could be a friend. Somebody filled it out, and on the death certificate, it actually says in the middle, and investors are like blown away. They'll even take a picture of it and say, show me. I'm like, it's right there. It's in the middle of the death certificate. It says wife, Lisa, wife, address, son, Michael, address. And the significance is that's a legitimate lead that you didn't have to think about, or you went on whitepages.com or went to a skip tracing thing and you couldn't find it. Like that's actually like somebody filled that out. And so if you get stumped and you don't know where to go, it's a huge opportunity.
Okay, so that was one item. You said there was a couple of items that you wanted to discuss. There was another one?
So obviously skip tracing, you can go, there's really good skip tracers out there that are able to find heirs. They'll actually do heir searches. If you ever had to go deep, like on some of the deals I'm working on, we may have to go to genealogists. There are genealogists out there that perform actual full-blown probate searches. So they'll go out and really find where these people are. But the other thing I think we were going to talk about too is, I'm building out a checklist eventually that can really help people when they go to a consult, or a house where they find an heir, and be able to be informed and educated on what is everybody looking for here. I think it's going to be super helpful for those that are out there.
Awesome. Al, appreciate your time. This has been very informative. It is with probate, how quickly you can get to these folks and sort of get on their radar. You're actually offering a solution that you don't have to get on them really that quickly, because, months later, there can be, heirs still trying to work through the problems and don't really know how to advance. And this is where you can come in and help investors that aren't the first to get in front of an heir trying to sell a property, and help them work through some of these more challenging issues. So it's been very informative for me. I really appreciate your time. Stephen, anything else before we let Al go?
No, thank you, Al. I'm sure you'll be contacted by people. There's a whole world of opportunity out there. It's just knowing how to do it. And I personally have read about probates. I've looked at them, but I haven't been active in that. And there's stuff out there, and we can all learn from that.
I think you all can, and it's amazing that this niche is out there, and it's only going to get bigger. The wave is coming. A third of the inventory in Florida by 2037 is going to be a lot of this probate stuff. So I think if you get in the game now, you're going to find a lot of stuff.
Awesome, Al. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
And that was Al Nicoletti talking probate in the state of Florida and finding opportunities. Stephen, what were your thoughts?
So that's a whole different world. All of us go through looking at conventional opportunities, but there's some nuggets to be mined if you know how to do it. And probates is one of those things that people don't know a lot about, and it's probably worth investigating.
I can tell you that most of my investment, Stephen, has been in probate. I think all of the properties that I've bought over the years have been probate. And, we've tried to work through some deals we've been successful in completing, and others we've struggled. And I have a handful of probate attorneys that will refer me business. They understand that if the property doesn't get sold, it's going to be tough for them to get paid on the back end. So they're incentivized to try to find someone who will execute and will complete a deal. And these guys know that when I come to the table and tell them I'm going to do something, I do it. So that they keep coming back because they know that I'm a fail-safe to be able to complete a transaction. I don't try to retrade them at the end or come up with the shenanigans at the end, and put pressure on them, make them look good. And to me, it's a win-win-win for everybody. I mean, you got heirs that are trying to get out of it. But I know from experience that the waters get muddied very quickly with investors just pounding the hell out of these family members, the heirs. It is tough. It's a tough situation. They become jaded very quickly. And, if you're looking at stuff 6 months down the road that they're still sitting on real estate, it's not been transacted. Frequently, you're dealing with a situation where, that they don't have the money. You see it's on the tax cert has already been issued on it, and the family doesn't really know how to move forward on it. And, I've had those conversations with folks of, well, let me try to work through. I'm kind of staring into the black hole with attorneys of, well, we don't know how much it's going to cost to be able to get your prospective seller out of this mess. And so I just become frustrated by the situation. I'll walk away, and have another tool in the tool bag. The toolbox is great. And I thought that Al, the way he works is a little bit different than most of them. And, it certainly could be a resource on those problematic transactions where, we just can't seem to advance the ball. And I'm not going to be, as an investor, I'm not going to buy a home where there's a $25,000 VIG for me, and I'm staring at a black hole on the back end of the attorney. And I just walk away from it. So this kind of solved this problem, and he could definitely be a resource. Stephen, Al was a great guest. Where can we hear about other great guests?
So the place to go is to our archives in our website, www.theinvestfloridashow.com. Also, you should download the app and listen while you're mobile or in the gym or on the beach.
I'm proud of you. We've only been doing this for 7 years, and you're just now starting to get the website right. And it's, nobody.
I wrote it on the back of my hand.
And everybody always says you're a fast learner, Stephen. It's proving out to be the case. Guys, as always, we appreciate the time that you invest with us each and every episode. And until next time, hasta la vista.
You've just listened to the Invest Florida podcast with Eric Odom and Stephen Silverman. Join us every week for actionable real estate investment ideas, and of course, visit our website at www.investfloridashow.com for more shows and tips on how to earn a cash flow in the real estate market in Florida. While hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show have no reason to doubt the validity of comments of our guests, we do not warranty their accuracy. Please check with your legal, financial, and tax advisors before entering into any investment. Returns will vary from person to person and deal to deal based on unique circumstances. All information expressed in this show is for educational purposes only. Opinions of the guests are not necessarily shared by the hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show.